Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on Pluto in both Sidereal Capricorn and Tropical Aquarius. So my name is Gary O'Toole. You can find me at timelineastrology.com. And I'm a Vedic astrologer, a Neo-Vedic astrologer, I guess is the title, because I use traditional Indian astrology along with the outer planets. And though I don't combine them in any way that interrupts or disrupts the traditional approach, I definitely add them in on top of what is already a very beautiful system, I think, with Indian astrology. So I use the sidereal zodiac myself, but I keep a side glance at the tropical zodiac, pardon the pun. So the tropical and the sidereal, in case you weren't aware, are quote unquote two different zodiacs, or two ways perhaps of looking at the same zodiac using two different calculations based on either the tropical, which is set with the equinoxes and the solstices, or the sidereal, which is star-based. Sidereal meaning fixed stars. And so the stars themselves, the constellations, line up with the sidereal zodiac more so, and the tropical lines up more with the seasons. So both, I think, are relevant, both work, but from two different perspectives. And though they are looking at the same thing from two different perspectives, I think they give, with using them both, a bigger picture or the whole picture. And I like to think of it as a 3D image. It's almost like you have both zodiacs, which are now at this time, according to most calculations, 24 degrees of a difference. So you have to arrive at your sidereal placements, subtract 24 degrees from the tropical. And that kind of alteration, like a 3D image, gives you that sort of 3D perspective, the full perspective, especially while using transits. And so I'm picking out Pluto to highlight this because Pluto is the slowest moving planet. And so we can use this to see bigger themes over longer periods of time. So I'm going to highlight some themes of Pluto in Sidereal Capricorn presently, and its transit now into Tropical Aquarius in the coming few years. And also show how these two are entwined on a deeper level, because actually this is something else I can point out. So let's go ahead. And first thing I want to mention here is that, of course, if we're talking about Pluto moving from Tropical Capricorn to Tropical Aquarius in the next few years, it will go back and forth between both signs. And we talk about it moving in the next many decades in the sidereal zodiac. We're talking about this transition from Capricorn, the earth-based sign, to the air sign, Aquarius. And this saying here, I think, fits this dynamic and this transition more than anything. So basically, necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is Capricorn. This is where we feel things are becoming very necessary, where Pluto, as the lord of the underworld, as the lord of death, as the agent of change, it has brought a lot of change to Capricorn, i.e. our systems, government systems, banking systems, work, everything in every which way, and how we live our life. That has created a lot of change since it moved into Capricorn. Now, depending on how you want to view that, you either take the tropical, which moved in here in 2008, and that's quite obviously expressed in the economic downturn in 2008. But you could also use the sidereal, because sidereally, Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2020, in January 2020, no less. And we all know what happened in January 2020. And after that, this sense of everything really having to change and literally being locked down and completely ground to a halt. And then having to slowly sort of splutter open again. So we're looking at, again, these two zodiacs, quote unquote, or two different views of the zodiac to see the whole picture. So, of course, moving from this necessity now, the Capricorn, Pluto then moves into Aquarius, in tropical Aquarius in the next few years. And it's all about invention. It's all about how do we progress? How do we reinvent the wheel, in a sense? And this is the overall arching theme and the overall theme for many, many years when we take both zodiacs into account. So here are the dates. Pluto in tropical by transit enters Aquarius on March 23rd, 2023. I'm recording this in April of 2022. So it's going to be a whole another year before we actually see Pluto enter Aquarius. It re-enters Capricorn though very soon after in June 11th, 2023, because as all planets do, they retrograde every year, and Pluto retrogrades for a few months every year. But then it will re-enter in December in the same year, by December 26, 2023, and then re-enter Capricorn once again in the following year, nearly a year later, on September 1st, 2024, before it finally re-enters and stays in Aquarius from November 19th, 2024. So they're the tropical transits of Pluto. The sidereal transit, though, is again subtracting 24 degrees at present, which is what most people do using a certain calculation. You take 24 degrees from the tropical and you get your sidereal, and therefore Pluto has just entered Capricorn since January 2020 and will remain here until 2040, when it will move into Aquarius. So it also goes through a division though, and this is a bit more complex, but bear with me. So the zodiac, and each sign of the zodiac is divided down by different degrees to give us divisional charts. So division literally just means we divide it down different degrees to give us different views of different areas of life. It's almost like you have a map of a country, which is your birth chart, but then you have different counties within that, which are like the divisional charts. And you can keep dividing it down into like cities and towns, and just all of that keeps honing in on specific areas. But one particular important one that's used in Vedic astrology or Indian astrology is the 9th division, what's called the Navamsha, 9th division. And that is seen alongside the main birth chart all the time. You always see them in pairs because it's like having two eyes on your chart. It gives you an underlying perspective and underlying strengths that are possibly not seen in the birth chart. But it also shows maybe underlying weaknesses as well. So it doesn't really give you the full picture when you just look at the birth chart. The 9th division gives you this full perspective. So it's 9 divisions. So each sign of the zodiac, the sun signs of 30 degrees, are divided 9 times. And what you get if you divide 9 into 30 is 3 degrees and 20 minutes. And so each 3 degrees, 20 minutes is like a foot, or pada as it's called in Vedic astrology. And there are 108 in the whole zodiac. If you take the 360 degrees and divide it, that's 108 different sections and 9 in each sign. So Aries has 9, Taurus has 9, all the signs have 9 divisions, and they correspond to the signs. So it begins with Aries, and I'll show you this in a graph pretty soon. And each of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, begin with the same. The first 3 degrees and 20 minutes of Aries, the first 3 degrees, 20 minutes of Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn are the same sign in this 9th division. So here you see Pluto entered Capricorn January 2020. Therefore, it also entered Capricorn at the same time in the 9th division, January 2020, until now it enters Aquarius, the 9th division, because that's the next one, because it's Capricorn and Aquarius, and they go in the same order. So it has just entered Aquarius, 9th division of Capricorn from February 18th this year, 2022. It will backtrack into the Capricorn division, which is again that first 3 degrees, 20 minutes of Capricorn itself in July 14th, 2022, before it re-enters the Aquarius division on December 26th, 2022. And then it finally leaves the Aquarius division by February 16, 2024. And then this is an aside, means that it enters Aquarius itself, sidereal Aquarius, the sign Aquarius, apart from the sign Capricorn, on March 5th, 2039, and then back and forth, and then before it goes finally in on January 15, 2040. So maybe leave out that last one for now, because I want to highlight this division of Aquarius, because what it's actually doing, and if I remind you of the tropical transit next year, 2023 and 2024, it's actually highlighting this shift, this division in the zodiac from Aquarius. So in actual fact, both zodiacs are actually pointing to the same thing in this few years. where Pluto is about to, but hasn't yet moved into Aquarius tropically, but it has moved into Aquarius, sidereal Aquarius, in the 9th division of Capricorn. So it kind of shows this kind of underlying theme here, and this transition, of course, as we're seeing in this necessity, and the necessity being the mother of invention right now. So here is the image, and this is by Nick Anthony Fiorenza, and he had a really good website, lunarplanner.com, which is no longer, it's if you go to the URL lunarplanner.com, that's a different, someone's running that website now. He passed away a couple of years ago, so he has left a huge body of work somewhere, someplace, I don't know where, but this is one of the things he used to do. He used to do these graphs, these charts, and these posters of the divisions. These are the 9th divisions. You can see here the shaded area. So here is Aries, ruled by Mars, but it's divided up into these 9 divisions within this one shaded area, and each one is 3 degrees 20 minutes, and then every 4 feet or padas of 3 degrees 20 minutes makes up a lunar mansion. This one is Ashwini, then it's Bharani, then Kritika. And so this divides up the zodiac further and further and further. So this is the 9th division. And you can see here that the beginning of Aries here, the shaded area, is also Aries, the first 3 degrees 20 minutes. And this happens again at Cancer, again at Libra and Capricorn. So that's how we divide it up. So looking at Pluto in both tropical and sidereal Aquarius, so let's look at the last time this happened, and then look at what may happen in the future. The last time it happened was obviously a very interesting time on the planet in terms of the Industrial Revolution, of course, and many other revolutions. But the tropical transit occurred from 1777 to 1797, those 20 years. The sidereal occurred from 1791, 92 to 1815, 1816. So you can see there's an overlap because of this 24 degree of a difference, and there being 30 degrees in each sign. Therefore, there's a 6-degree overlap where it's in both tropical and Aquarius and sidereal at the same time. And that happens when it goes to the end of the tropical sign and it's just moved into the beginning of the sidereal sign. And that occurred last time between 1791 and 1797. Now, when we talk about what happened then, I'll give examples. You'll see what was going on then. It was quite intense, to say the least. And that's because it's doubling up on both tropical and sidereal, and the themes are there. So what happened, of course, last time was a lot of technological advancement, and we're likely to see that growth like exponentially. That will be like mind-boggling. But looking back at history, we can see, even back then in the 1770s, what happened as, again, thinking about the tropical zodiac, Pluto was just about to move into tropical Aquarius. And in 1775, this invention, the turtle submarine, was invented by David Bushnell. And so this is really interesting because there's a couple of things here. And again, I picked out a few stories that would highlight these things, the 2 different zodiacs, the symbolism of Capricorn and Aquarius, and how Pluto was in both at the same time, and how both actually came to be. And very symbolic, this one. It looks like a pot, and it's submerged, of course, because it's a submarine. And if you think about Aquarius, what is Aquarius? It is the water bearer. It's a pot. In Indian astrology, it's called Kumbha, the pot. So you could literally say that this is Aquarius representation, but it's called the turtle. And the turtle is very much about the planet Saturn, because Saturn, one of the avatars of Saturn, the Vishnu avatar of Saturn, is called Kurma. So it's the turtle. It's like he's got his shell on his back and he's trying to hold up everything. The fact that it's called the turtle and it looks like this submerged pot, you can see both the signs Capricorn and Aquarius been expressed through this invention, which, by the way, didn't fare very well. And this is one of the things to note with Aquarius and Pluto in Aquarius, is new inventions that really don't work, basically. New inventions also that in this case was for, attack. And this was for attacking a ship. And so this, again, the Lord of Death, Pluto, coming in a strong way. Another one that we can use is the toilet, because Alexander Cummings of Scotland invented the S-trap in 1775, again, same year, just as Pluto is about to enter tropical Aquarius. And of course, why this? Well, I mean, obviously, if we think about Pluto and the Lord of the Underworld, well, it's all of the things that we maybe don't want to deal with, like literally our shit, and wanting to dispose of it. And this, you know, the pot, again, you can think of the Aquarius and the bowl and the water bearer, and getting rid of our shit. And so Joseph Bramah of England used Cummings's design when he installed toilets, and he improved on that design as well by developing a slide valve with a hinge flap as a flotation system. So this model first patented in 1778. So Pluto had entered Aquarius at that time, and it was the first practical flush. And so the theme of Pluto and Aquarius really highlighted here. And the next one I picked out is, again, you know, I'm trying to pick out things that aren't so obvious, maybe, that we might think about, and that kind of in another way express what Pluto and Aquarius is all about. And this is one I found intriguing, and that is soda water. Because when you think about Aquarius, it's one of the most unusual signs. It's the water bearer, but it's an air sign, and it's a fixed air sign. So it's really unusual. It's probably the most unusual sign. But soda water expresses all of these dynamics, because you're literally pumping air into water. The water bearer, air sign, you know, fixed into water. So in search of a remedy for upset stomachs, interestingly enough, so English chemist Joseph Priestley became the first person to artificially carbonate water at Leeds Brewery in 1767. Now, that's a whole decade before Pluto actually entered tropical Aquarius. And he published this paper, Impregnating Water with Fixed Air. But while he invented that before the transit, Jacob Schwepp, of course, you might know the name Schweppes, simplified and popularized it a decade or so later in 1781, when Pluto had entered Aquarius tropically. And it was produced then on a large scale. So I thought that was interesting. So let's look at what may or may not happen in the future then, with Pluto in tropical and sidereal Aquarius. Tropically, again, from next year, 23 and 2024 to 2043, 2044, 2 decades. But sidereal not till 2040 to 2062, 64. Again, 2 decades. But the overlap is what I'm really interested in here, and that is from 2040 to 2043, 44. And this is when I think that the themes of Pluto in Aquarius will be very prominent. So let's look at what happened the last time that Pluto was in both tropical Aquarius and sidereal Aquarius. And that was the reign of terror. Now, I don't mean to in any way instill terror in you by actually looking at this and thinking that this is the future, but I do think that there's a theme to be acknowledged here, and that it could be expressed in a different kind of way. And I do, obviously it will be. And I think I have some notions about that. So let me express that. So the coming years are likely to be so revolutionary, so technologically advanced as to leave those who are unwilling to adapt with their heads spinning. And so think about the new headsets, think about the metaverse. You know, you're literally like having a disembodied experience when you put one of those on, like you're not in your body, you're in your head in this virtual world. But at least it's better than literally losing our heads, as was the case during the reign of terror from September 1793 to July 1794. And this was all about, you know, obviously the French Revolution and the invention of the guillotine, where people literally had their heads cut off. So why do we say that? Because Aquarius is all about being in our heads. It's ruled by the north node of the moon in Indian astrology called Rahu, which is a disembodied head in Vedic myth. It's literally all about thinking, trying to figure things out, being in our heads, and like literally expressed in the worst possible way you can think of, the last time they both zodiacs, Aquarius, had Pluto present. Next time, let's hope we're not going to see these kinds of scenes, but we'll see again this kind of, you know, mass, I would say by 2040, mass sort of movements into the online world, I would say. And this kind of, being really hooked up to the metaverse in a big way. And we're going to see it build, of course, up until that point, but we're going to see it more and more by 2040. So one of the thing I want to mention about Pluto itself, which in modern astrology, of course, rules Scorpio. And what is Scorpio? Well, Scorpio is where we resist change, and yet it's all about change. So I've written this here. We may resist something that is inevitable, because change, of course, is, but the resistance, I believe, itself plays an important part in change. So that's why Scorpios are a tricky sign as well. In Indian astrology, they are ruled by the other node, the south node, Ketu. So it's all about the past more so, and the headless body in that equation. In Vedic myth, the demon had his head cut off, and all our desires are in our head. This is the north node Rahu in Aquarius. In Scorpio, it's all about renunciation. It's all about wanting to let go and give up, but we don't let go or give up that easily. We resist, and eventually we change. And this is part and parcel of the change itself, I believe. So even resistance movements themselves are part and parcel of the change that happens in society. So that's an important point to make, because now we're mixing up the ruler in modern astrology of Scorpio, i.e. Pluto, and Aquarius. So we're linking the south node, in other words, to the north node in one way or the other. We're linking the past to the future. We're having to overcome the past in order to move into the future. We can only get there from here. In other words, we can only deal with, we can only get to where we want to be by dealing with where we are at now and the past. And so that's an important consideration in terms of the Aquarius impulse, because Aquarius is so eager to move forward and evolve and innovate that it oftentimes does so without thinking about the past and past consequences and mistakes in the past even. So it's like inventions that just don't work, for example, or inventions that, have an impact in other ways that we hadn't accounted for. And I won't mention anything in our modern context, but you can, think about what those things may be. But it's like things that are invented now and then create issues down the line. And what are the issues down the line? Well, the north node becomes the south node eventually, i.e. what we do in the future creates our past eventually. So the north node and south node are constantly linked in this ever evolving spiral, or this loop, this Ouroboros, like the serpent devouring its own tail. So this link between Pluto and its rulership of Scorpio, and in Indian astrology, Ketu, the south node's rulership of Scorpio, is unmistakable. It's all about dealing with the past and dealing with things maybe that we'd rather not deal with, that are hidden in the past, that we want to move away from, but we have to deal with. So when you're mixing Pluto in Aquarius, which is all about the future, we have to be mindful of this all of the time. And we don't want to lose our heads, put it that way, just like Ganesh, the Lord here that's associated with Ketu, the Lord of Vedic astrology, lost his head. So Pluto in Sidereal Capricorn and tropical Aquarius. So from 2023 to 2040, this is now when Pluto will be in tropical Aquarius, but will be in Sidereal Capricorn at this time, from 2023 to 2040. So you have to look at both, therefore. Well, you don't have to, but I believe it's really helpful to look at both at the same time. And for me, one expression of that could be populations likely to resist controls with Pluto in Aquarius, but at the same time, with it transiting Capricorn, continuing changes to the system. So as systems change, in other words, as systems change, of course, with Pluto in Sidereal Capricorn, we will resist those changes to a degree, while we're also trying to innovate and change the systems that are no longer working, that are having to change. So Pluto is continuing to break down the system in Capricorn, and will do for many years. But at the same time, its movement into tropical Aquarius shows this kind of more innovative approach now, where we're really kind of moving forward with things as things continue to dismantle. And, we're not going to throw out the system overnight. It's going to take some time and many, many years, as has been the case in history and as will be the case. So another correlation you could bring here is, Pluto as Hades in the Greek myth and the king of the underworld. But in Indian astrology, in Vedic astrology, we can relate Pluto to the god Yama. Now, here's another sort of concept here and correlation. And Yama is the deity of death, but it's also the deity of dharma, of righteousness. And so the symbol here on the left is by Samir Rana. He's a visual artist that has made this deck of cards. This is for patrons only, by the way, of Timeline Astrology. If you are interested in signing up as a patron, you can have a look there. But I call it the productive one. It is between 13 degrees and 20 minutes and 26 degrees and 40 minutes of Aries. So it's right smack bang in the middle of Aries, this lunar mantra called Bharani, meaning she who bears, or to bear something. And of course, the symbol is very apt here. It's the yoni, or the vulva. And it's all about giving birth to something, to bearing something. And it's ruled by Yama, the god of death. And of course, you might think, well, what does that got to do with the god of death? It's birth. But of course, birth implies death. There is no death without birth. For something to die, it must have been born. So it's all of these big themes of life and death, in other words, and we can relate this to the god Yama. But it's also, like I said, of dharma, of righteousness, and it's said to be the deity we meet with first after dying, and that we are judged based on our deeds in the past. So again, it's tying back into Ketu, the South Node, and the past, and Scorpio, our past sins. So we're not getting away from this. We have to remind ourselves of the past and the mistakes we've made in the past and our past sins before we can evolve and move forward. And that is the tricky part of both Scorpio and Aquarius. And its link now with Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio, moving into Aquarius, is really important. Here is an image of Yama. And he rides a buffalo. So you can see here an image of a sculpture of Yama riding a buffalo. So I'll give a couple of examples of this and how it's playing out in our modern day. And so this is a more obvious example right now. And you could say it's expressing the most intense and, Pluto-like themes of being the Lord of Death, quite literally in Ukraine, bodies lining the streets, the country, many cities being razed to the ground. I mean, they will rise like a phoenix from the flame, which is the other part of this. The change that they're going through now is immense, and it's hard to watch. But this is Pluto. And why am I bringing up these charts? Well, this is a chart for August 24th, 1991 at 6 p.m. in Kiev. On the left, you have the tropical. On the right, you have the sidereal. I'll show you the tropical first. It is Aquarius rising. LA here refers to Lagna in Indian astrology, means ascendant. Really, it's basically a word to mean marriage, Lagna. And it basically means the marriage between heaven and earth. So if you look directly east when you were born, that marriage between heaven and earth on the horizon, encapsulating you in a physical form, your rising sign, your physical body. So the chart for Ukraine began with Aquarius, tropical Aquarius rising, with Saturn and Moon placed therein. And of course, Pluto is moving in here now, right? So we can see that now, but we can see it more clearly in a way with the sidereal, because it's already begun. Because according to the sidereal zodiac, the Ukraine chart has Capricorn rising and Saturn and Moon therein, same. We're just changing the signs. We're not changing the house. I'm using whole sign houses here, by the way. And so Pluto moved in here in January 2020. And this is the key thing here. So this is Ukraine. They're seeing the most obvious expression of Pluto, the Lord of Death, and literally completely wiping out cities. Another one that maybe not so obvious, and I don't think it is as obvious as yet, but I think it's going to get more and more obvious. And I do believe that the China chart shows that China is likely to, I'm saying China is likely to implode in the coming years, but I don't know really what that means. But I do think that they're going to go through such change, and you'll see this in the chart. And this is based on October 1st, 1949 at 3:01 p.m. in Beijing. This is the tropical. Again, Aquarius rising. 1 degree of Aquarius rising with the moon at 3 degrees. So when Pluto moves in here in the next few years, obviously this is going to have a huge impact on this chart. Now in the sidereal, it's Capricorn. And again, it has just moved in here. Capricorn and moon rising. You'll notice that in both charts, regardless of what zodiac you use, using the whole sign houses, all of the planets are in the same houses. So you're basically looking at the same thing, but coloring it in differently. It's like you have the outline, which is the same in both, but the coloring it in differently is the difference between the tropical and the sidereal. And so you're going to make that distinction in a way, but really there is no distinction in terms of the house position. So in other words, first house, moon in the first house, whether it's Aquarius or Capricorn, Pluto is transiting the first house in the next many years. And like I said, I do believe that China is going to go through such change and upheaval that maybe, not like we're seeing in Ukraine, but perhaps like people just rising up against controls, because that's the other side of Pluto. It's about losing control, but sensing a loss of control, we try to control even more. And governments do this more than anything. And this ties back into Scorpio, of course, which is that sign that is more about control than anything, because we sense we don't have control over everything. We certainly can't control the fact that we're going to die one day. That's Scorpio. So Pluto brings up all of these kinds of fears around that. And so we attempt to control the uncontrollable. Countries, when Pluto comes to visit, attempts to crack down even more because they sense they're losing control more and more. And I do believe this is the case in China. I think it's quite obvious to see that right now. That's my 2 cents on the Pluto transit in both tropical Aquarius and sidereal Capricorn. If you want to follow me online, you can go to timelineastrology.com. If you'd like to become a patron and go deeper in with the astrology, you can go to patreon.com/timelineastrology. I write daily reports for patrons and do monthly horoscopes, sign-based forecasts, video forecasts, and in-depth written reports as well on a monthly basis. So I do a whole lot more besides. So if you'd like to join, I have a Scorpio video club where I share some of the secrets of Indian astrology like I have done now. And I also have a astro-philosophy discussion group, which I'm really excited about developing more and more, where we just have discussions about all of the kind of things that come up with astrology, beyond just the analysis and the technical know-how. It brings up a lot of philosophical debates that, are very interesting. So I hope you can join me on patreon.com /timeline astrology. Thank you so much for listening to this all the way through to the end. And until next time.